On January 15th, 2015, the pilot episode of a vibrant new cartoon named Star vs. the Forces of Evil aired on Disney XD to an audience of over 1 million. Created by Darren Nefsey, the show remains one of Disney XD's most successful cartoons to this day. For most of its run, Star vs. the Forces of Evil was known for its magical girl anime inspirations, and a fandom largely dedicated to shipping. Nowadays, it's more known for having a lackluster 4th season, and a finale so disappointing, some X-fans may tell you it's not worth watching the show at all. There's a few videos dedicated to this topic, and I recommend watching them if you're interested in other people's opinions, but I've yet to see a full retrospective for the show that covers the things I care about. And I'm glad for it, because I have so many thoughts about this series. If you're coming from my last video, yes, there will be a little bit of queer analysis here, but I have some different focuses for this one. Mainly, the show's take on a decolonial narrative, and why it may not have landed. For me, Star vs. the Forces of Evil is the perfect balance of amazingly crafted and somewhat disappointing writing that leaves me constantly thinking about it 10 years after its initial release. So it's my goal in this video to revisit every episode of Star vs., picking apart each season to fully understand what went right, what went wrong, and what keeps me coming back. Whether you're a veteran fan or have never seen a single episode, join me on this journey to re-explore one of my favorite shows, and maybe even reconceptualize its supposedly lacking finale. In my last video, I took on an avatar inspired by the material I was covering. I thought it'd be fun to continue that trend, so I redesigned my avatar, inspired by the Star vs. art style, just for this video. Star vs. the Forces of Evil begins with a lively introduction to the world of Muni, in which the matriarchal butterfly family rules the land with the power of a magic wand. Princess Star Butterfly inherits the wand upon turning 14, but after immediately raining destruction upon Muni, she is taken to Earth as an exchange student to train. For at least the first season of the show, Star is characterized as extremely energetic, compulsive, and reckless. Her magic, largely coming from her imagination, replicates this, being a force of cosmic, horror-like destruction.
I'm a magical princess from another dimension.
As a balance, Star is assigned to stay with Marco, a human boy unwillingly described as the safe kid. At first, Marco's reputation for safety and organization is exaggerated, making him reluctant to accept Star as his friend and roommate. However, when monsters aim to steal Star's wand, it's revealed Marco is a skilled karate student, now excited to embrace Star's chaotic life for the enjoyment of beating up evil.
Wait! I don't want you to go. I want you to stay with us.
Really? Hugs!
This first episode also introduces us to the main antagonist of Season 1, Ludo. Living in a castle of his own, Ludo and his army of monsters aim to capture Star's wand and take over Muni. He's not a very serious villain at first, but, well, he's quite an interesting character we'll revisit throughout the seasons. In episode 1B, we meet Star's best friend, Flying Princess Ponyhead.
Girl, we're going out tonight. Are you ready to make some bad choices?
Let me just wake up Marco.
Oh, that is not a dead person?
The episode is mainly about Ponyhead's possessiveness of Star, leading her to basically try to kill Marco. Ponyhead is intentionally depicted as being kind of an awful person, and whether or not I find this endearing or annoying varies from episode to episode. More importantly, this is the introduction to St. Olga's Reformed School for Wayward Princesses, a place Star is deeply frightened of throughout the first season and will be important throughout the series. King Ponyhead sends her daughter to the Reform School.
No jail can hold on to me for long! Wow!
Oh, kids, you have them and then you wish they weren't around.
And Star gets to keep Ponyhead's dimensional scissors that allow them to travel to any dimension. This is the setup for the rest of the season. Wacky, cross-dimensional, monster-fighting adventures while Star adjusts to human teen life. I think it's important to acknowledge the environment the show was airing in as well. Disney XD was a channel primarily made for the boys market. Despite being a magical girl cartoon, Star vs. first season fits surprisingly well. While I think Star vs. definitely became the quote-unquote girl show on Disney XD up until it was moved to Disney Channel, Darren Nefsey did a great job reaching across and breaking the norms of the gendered children's market. But likely because of its presence on Disney XD, there are certain elements and characters in the first season that don't really carry over into the rest of the show when it becomes more interested in plot and character development. For example, episode 2A introduces us to Alfonso and Ferguson, Marco's two nerdy best friends that are almost entirely forgotten about by season 2. The episode also features Miss Skolnick, a math teacher who Star accidentally turns into a troll. Surprise, surprise, she also doesn't get seen much after season 1. This is a trend with a lot of the Earth characters, but one staple is Jackie Lynn Thomas, a skateboarder and Marco's first love interest. Typical cool girl, clearly out of Marco's league. The actual plot of the episode is less important. Star sets Skolnick up with a monster who dumps her in the end, whatever. I'm going to be zooming through some of these earlier episodes, not because I don't like them, but this video is going to be long enough already. Save me the editing time. Episode 2B is probably the most predictable episode in terms of the show's setup, as well as one of the more high-energy episodes. Star misinterprets an upcoming football game as a battle of war, preparing the field with traps and weaponry, while Marco is distracted protecting Ferguson from getting kidnapped as the school mascot. Standard alien misinterprets human culture trope, but still fun. Episode 3A, Monster Arm, is our first Marco-focused episode. After breaking his arm right before a major karate tournament, Star attempts to fix it and instead turns it into a sentient, evil tentacle arm. This introduces a small but important piece of Marco's character, being that he doesn't have the strongest will and is susceptible to manipulation and evil magic. He also has major beef with this 8-year-old, which is one of my favorite bits from season 1.
Wait! He's got a monster arm! That's not fair!
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
It was heavily implied that the monster arm would return someday, but it never did. And I actually think that's fine. It served its purpose of exploring Marco's character. I don't think it needed to be anything else. Episode 3B gives us a better look at Marco's family and home life. The Diaz family has enthusiastically hosted multiple exchange students before Star, one of which comes to visit. Gustav, from Scandinavia. After finding Scandinavian books in his bag, Star spies on Gustav and comes to the conclusion that he's a cannibal. But no, he's just lying about his identity. Star ends up keeping his secret, and in exchange...
Bye-bye, Gustav! Bye!
Not my favorite episode, but it's a funny twist on the suspicious jealousy trope. Episode 4A is the introduction to Star's Season 1 crush, Oscar, a guitar player with fangs for some reason. Star gives him her phone number, but when he doesn't call, Marco tries to cheer her up by bringing Ludo's monsters to fight. It's cute, not much more to say about it. Episode 4B follows Star trying to buy a new charger for her wand at the magical shop Quest Buy. We see that the wand is run by a tiny unicorn, which is surprisingly an important detail. I think it's implied throughout the show that Star's wand is the only wand in existence, so I wonder if the size of this wand charger department suggests that wasn't always the plan. Episode 5A serves as another Diaz family episode, but is also the first episode properly exploring Muni, as Star compulsively gifts the Diazes a trip to Muni as an anniversary present. Along with various fantastical dangers, Muni also has a large class divide, though for now it's just a comedic parody of medieval monarchies rather than a serious plot detail. Another note, most Mumins look identical to humans, not featuring the shapes on their cheeks like Star and her mother have. At the end of the episode, Star has a bonding moment with her dad, learning she gets her monster fighting tendencies from him. In 5B, Star invites herself to Brittany Wong's birthday party, a rich, popular girl type character who once again is only relevant to season 1. Marco tries to talk to Jackie Lynn Thomas without throwing up from car sickness, and... Episode 6A, Muberty, begins with Star growing purple hearts on her face and stressing to Marco things are about to get very weird.
Do you mean typical Star weird, or like destroy the school weird?
Destroy the school.
Whatever Muberty is causes Star to have a strong reaction to boys, so she traps herself in a locker while Marco retrieves her magic book of spells for help. Upon opening the book, Marco meets Glossaric, the royal bookkeeper, who makes a deal to help Marco if he brings him pudding. Meanwhile, Star breaks out of her locker prison and turns into this amazingly designed butterfly creature, whose only goal is to entrap boys. Glossaric explains that the only option is to wait it out and hope she returns to normal, but Marco still decides to interfere with her boy-crazy rampage. He tries to capture her in a net to prevent her from taking Oscar, but when Glosseric tells him he's making things worse, he lets her ride off into the sky with Oscar's car. Marco thinks Star has left for good, but she shortly crashes back down to Earth with her puberty officially over.
Look, Marco! I got my puberty wings!
Does that mean you can fly?
Let's test it out.
Ah! Whee!
Nope.
This was the first episode of Star Vs. That really stood out to me, mainly for its excellent art direction and sound design, but also for its lore intrigue. No one really explains puberty, to Marco or to the audience. Its full purpose is left kinda ambiguous, but we'll see aspects of it explored more later. One other interesting detail in this episode, Star never targets Marco when she's in her puberty form. She stresses that Marco is likely making things worse at the beginning, but when she's in full bug mode, she completely ignores Marco until he angers her. Some veteran fans already know where I'm going with this. This was one of the first pieces of evidence provided for the trans-femme Marco fan theory / headcanon. I'll be pointing out the evidence for it as we go along, but we'll be giving my own thoughts on it a little bit later. As great of an episode as 6A is, 6B is one of the weaker episodes of the season. Not necessarily a bad episode, it has a very bouncy and dynamic animation style that's a notable improvement, but its plot just doesn't interest me. Basically, Marco and his friends have to go to Pixtopia to pay off Star's magic mirror bill, and Ferguson nearly marries a pixie queen.
He was out of my league anyway.
Episode 7A is the first episode exploring monster morality. After Ludo fires one of his minions, Monster Claws, Marco tries to prove monsters can be good, while Star tries to prove monsters are evil by nature. Star ends up agreeing to fake a fight with Lobster Claws to get his old job back, but when he grabs Star's wand, Star sees there is a side of him that's good. There's a lot to be said about this episode, but we'll revisit it later once we have more context. In 7B, Star is casting spells in her sleep, and Marco attempts to solve the problem in order to even out how many times Star has saved him. Marco concludes that it's Star's overbearing mother causing her sleep spells.
You have mother issues!
Yay! I have mother issues!
But turns out she was just trying to defend herself from a face-stealing princess trying to escape St. O's reform school. The added plot of Marco tallying how many times they've saved each other is pretty reminiscent to a Gravity Falls type plot, with that same corny resolution scene music a lot of Disney cartoons have.
You're this magic princess from another dimension, and I'm just...
I guess it's that you're better at me at, everything. And you always rub it in my face.
Nothing wrong with it, but it can get kind of tiring to watch as an adult. Episode 8A, Blood Moon Ball, is one of the best episodes of Season 1, if not the whole show. It was the episode that got me interested in Star Vs., and I'm sure I'm not the only one. We're introduced to Tom Lucitor, Prince of the Demons and Star's ex-boyfriend. He invites Star to the Blood Moon Ball, convincing her to go with the promise that he's changed. Their breakup was likely due to Tom's major anger issues, but he's now working with a life coach to quell his anger. After an ominous painting in Star's room calls the blood moon the Moon of Lovers, Marco decides he needs to rescue Star and heads to the ball. A ball attendant explains that the blood moon chooses two souls to bond together for eternity. As Tom goes to change the music to one of the best songs in the entire show, Marco grabs Star's hand, and the blood moon shines on them. Seriously, the song they wrote for this sets the mood so well. I'm too scared of Disney to play all of it, but I'll include a link in the description along with other songs I'll mention throughout. The two of them dance in the light while Marco tries to convince Star to leave. Upon finding them, Tom pushes Marco to the ground, and the blood moon fades as Tom lets his anger get the best of him. Star freezes Tom and leaves the dance. Disappointed in Tom, but even more so Marco. You know the cheesy resolution scene music in the last episode? This one doesn't have that. Only the sound of crickets play as Star explains that Marco should have trusted her to handle things on her own, and that she doesn't want Marco to play hero.
You're right. I should have trusted you. I'm sorry I ruined your night.
Well, it wasn't a total disaster. Now I know you can dance.
This episode takes the sound design, art direction, and plot intrigue of puberty and cranks it up to 100. The ending is really interesting. Not just the important boundaries Star sets up for Marco, but afterwards there's this small acknowledgement that something has changed due to the events of this night. However, Star deflects attention on it. They do not talk about what happened. If it wasn't obvious already, Star and Marco are the endgame romantic relationship. I will be talking at length about this relationship in this video, along with other relationship possibilities, since it becomes a pretty significant part of the show's development and its fandom. There's been times throughout the show's running that I've really rooted for the Starco ship, as well as times I did not want them to get together. So I'm going to try to give multiple perspectives and break down why I've had such a mixed time with this ship. Let's start now with a look at their relationship throughout Season 1. The thing about a Season 1 of shows like this is the showrunners often play with various ideas to see what sticks, with a bit less concern for continuity. That's not to say Star and Marco's relationship feels inconsistent in Season 1, just that different episodes will explore certain aspects of their dynamic to fit that particular episode's theming. Episode 7b, Pixtopia, makes them feel much more like siblings, with Star getting on Marco's case for messing up like her and even calling him her mess-up twin. And any Season 1 episodes revolving around Jackie or Oscar tend to involve Marco or Star in a wingman or supportive best friend role. That doesn't negate the potential for a future romantic relationship. In fact, Season 2 expands on this pretty well, but because of how strong their best friend dynamic is in this first season, I can see why some people might have preferred it remained that way, including myself at some points. But, as the ominous painting said, the blood moon is the moon of lovers, and for better or worse, that seems pretty damning. But enough of that for now, let's get through the rest of Season 1. Episode 8b continues the tradition of somewhat weaker B episodes, and not even with the bouncy animation of Pixtopia. However, I do find the plot more interesting, and it introduces a very important character. As Star becomes obsessed with fortune cookies, Ludo aims to hire someone to help him manage his monsters. In come Toffee, a mysterious, well-dressed monster who advises Ludo to use these fortune cookies to his advantage. The plan backfires, though it seems Toffee didn't expect anything less. The episode ends with one last fortune cookie.
A great evil has been unleashed.
Episode 9a immediately brings us back to that bouncy animation, and introduces Marco's 23-step plan to ask out Jackie, another very Gravity Falls-esque plot. As Marco worries about being late to his daily head nod to Jackie, Star ends up freezing time and finds she can't unfreeze it. Star and Marco enter the Planes of Time dimension and find that Father Time refuses to return to his time wheel. We get to see baby Star, and Marco has a crisis realizing he's been nodding to Jackie since kindergarten. They find a compromise to get Father Time back on the wheel, and Marco finally says hi to Jackie.
Hey, Jackie!
Hey, Marco. Well, see ya.
In 9b, Star's dad ends up staying in the Diaz house as he's gotten in a fight with Star's mother. Star realizes how exhausting her dad can be, and a character that looks like he came from regular show makes him realize the mess he's made and go back home. Episode 10 is our first full 22-minute episode, in which Star and Marco decide to break into St. Olga's reform school to free Ponyhead for her birthday. Marco is disguised as a princess, which he expresses distaste for at first. They manage to find Ponyhead, but she's been brainwashed into perfect princessdom. Marco starts an uprising to escape, and while they're escaping, they encounter an interesting room with monster heads that look similar to Toffee, and some astral symbols on the ground. Star and Ponyhead escape through an air duct, but Marco is captured and sent to solitary confinement to be brainwashed. Star is able to return Ponyhead to herself, and they rescue Marco together.
Gotcha, Marco! Now let's get the heck out of here!
Are they gonna let me keep the dress?
When the head mistress of the school, Miss Heinous, is frightened by Star's magic, clovers appear on her cheeks, something we've only seen so far on Star and her mom. Marco escalates his uprising to a full takeover of St. O's, and Ponyhead decides to stay with the other princesses to make sure no one will be brainwashed again. The episode ends with Heinous identifying Marco's home dimension and promising to annihilate him. This episode was definitely the main spark for trans-femme Marco headcanons, which on the surface may seem kinda superficial. I mean, just because Marco had to pretend to be a girl and eventually embrace the role by the end of the episode, doesn't mean he's trans, right? Well, yes, and I do think it's important to acknowledge the positive impact of representing a boy embracing his femininity in a children's show like this, even if it began as a joke. However, that shouldn't invalidate a trans interpretation of Marco's character. The idea started because trans people resonated with Marco's experiences. He really comes out of his shell in this episode. It's the first time we see him take on a leadership role, one focused on rebellion and expressing your individuality. Maybe that's because Marco feels empowered when taking on a different role. While not an experience exclusive to trans people, the interpretation is valid, and there will be more to back it up later. Episode 11A is another very important episode, Munipendence Day. Star brings together her friends to celebrate Mumin's Independence Day, detailing the story of how early Mumin settlers defeated monsters through the power of the Queen's magic, and ooh boy, I bet you know where this is going. Marco is the one who points out how uneven the war seems to be. Meanwhile, Toffee has installed a new surveillance device to watch over Star, replacing Ludo's minion Buff Frog's job as a spy. He also calls Munipendence Day
the Great Monster Massacre.
He gives Buff Frog the chance to prove himself by stealing the wand with a teleportation device, as Star slowly realizes with horror just how messed up this holiday might be. But Toffee has rigged his device to not work when Buff Frog uses it. When Star realizes Buff Frog isn't Ferguson in costume, she lets him run away. Toffee convinces Ludo to fire him, and when Star sees him alone outside, she leaves some corn out for him. Okay, Munipendence Day. Surprise, surprise! Star vs. the Forces of Evil is about colonialism! I somehow managed to find the one thing that Star vs. and my last video essay topic have in common. Flawed but meaningful depictions of racial segregations. If I had a nickel, well, you know the rest. I'm cracking jokes, but I do genuinely love this episode and what it sets up. So why do I say that it's flawed? You might think it's because so far the narrative has supported the idea that monsters are evil. Even if we've seen they have the capacity for good, Ludo and his monster's obsession with stealing the wand is depicted as a hunger for power, not a fight for injustice. But I don't think that's actually the problem here. This is only season 1. There is plenty of time for the narrative to shift. In fact, I'm really interested in a decolonial narrative that begins fully convincing the audience of the colonial perspective, only to slowly reveal both to the protagonist and the audience that the belief they've been fed since childhood are based on a history of colonial segregation and genocide. There are flaws in that narrative along the way too, but overall makes for more interesting character development and political analysis. So, I guess the main problem I see here is they're monsters. We touched on this a bit in the last video, but it can be a slippery slope when you tell a story about racism using significant biological differences. It can fail to capture the actual root causes of racism, and accidentally perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Thankfully, Star vs. Monsters don't seem to take any inspiration from real racial or ethnic groups in their overall culture, even if their plight is a direct representation of indigenous genocide. At the very least, I don't think anyone would come out of watching Star vs. picking up stereotypes, though it wouldn't surprise me if some people felt uncomfortable by the monster portrayals, especially with some things we'll get to later. But as of right now, like every good Season 1 episode, Munipendence Day represents some great potential in the show's world building. Let's just hope they don't squander that. And in episode 11B, Star obsesses over a TV infomercial product. It's actually a pretty fun episode exploring Star navigating Earth on her own, but it feels like it should have aired a little earlier in the season. And Marco has beef with an 8-year-old again.
Classic Marco, writhing in agony.
In episode 12A, Star takes Miss Skolnick's class on a magical field trip to prove her leadership capabilities. Chaos ensues, Miss Skolnick learns about her troll biology and successfully saves her class from a yarn creature, and Marco takes the next step in talking to Jackie. Episode 12B features Star accidentally giving Marco a giant sentient beard, having to fight the hair and Ludo's monsters to get her wand back. Toffee uses the opportunity to display Ludo's failure as a leader and usurp him entirely, bringing us to Season 1's finale, Storm the Castle. The episode begins with Star nearly getting herself and Marco killed for a sandwich, causing a bitter argument. When Star goes to apologize later, she finds that Marco has been kidnapped for ransom, one of Ludo's monsters telling her to bring the wand to Ludo's castle. Marco's parents try to help, but Star decides to go alone. Outside the castle, Ludo tries to apologize to Buff Frog.
My name is Yevgeny Bogoyabov.
Oh, so you're foreign.
Where the hell is he even from? Is there Russia on Muni? Ludo tries to bribe him with baby tadpoles, and Star finds out from him that the castle is no longer under Ludo's control. Buff Frog, wanting his new children to grow up in the castle, agrees to help Star take down Toffee. In a more brutal use of her magic than we've seen before, Star immediately blows Toffee's arm off upon arrival. As she finds none of her spells are able to break Marco's prison, her eyes and cheeks begin to glow, and she seems to cast her most powerful spell yet, shattering the glass. However, the glass grows back, as does Toffee's arm. As the glass begins to shrink around Marco, Star gives up and hands Toffee the wand.
I don't want your wand. Destroy it.
What?
Surprise!
Star whispers the first spell her mother taught her to the wand, which kills the unicorn powering it. Toffee keeps his end of the deal and frees Marco, but Star hides in the glass and tells Buffrog to run, as the wand explodes and destroys the entire castle. Ludo gets kicked into a random dimension, and Star and Marco mourn the loss of the wand, until an Italian horse, implied to be the dead unicorn's son, enters the wand and revives it, though it looks quite different than before. After Star left the Diaz house, Marco's parents called upon Star's parents to help, bringing the Moomin army a little too late. Queen Moon is mostly just happy to see Star is safe, but reports the damage of the wand to Glossaric, describing it as cleaved.
Cleaved? Now that's a funny word. You can cleave something apart, or you can cleave something together.
The episode and season ends with Glossaric giving a warning about finding all the pieces to the wand. While I think the Blood Moon Ball is still my favorite episode of the season, there is no doubt this season finale was excellently crafted. They do a great job balancing the introduction to a serious plot thread and keeping in the comedic, sillier tones of season 1. And it also brings up a ton of questions for the rest of the show to explore. What were Toffee's motivations? Why was the first spell Star learned a spell that kills magic? What's up with the new broken wand? Many of these questions will be explored in season 2. Rewatching season 1 of Star Vs is always a treat, as every time without fail I forget how good it is. Sure, not every episode is for me, but it is so obvious how much heart Darren Nefsey and her crew were putting into the show's story from the get-go. Despite some plotlines being fairly predictable, Star, Marco, and the supporting cast are so lovable that it doesn't matter. They're also realistically flawed in both obvious and subtle ways that'll be explored more later, like Star having a tendency to avoid confronting her real problems, or Marco being easily influenced by others. It's these characters, along with intriguing fantasy world-building, that got me and so many others quickly hooked on Star Vs. But as many of you know, most people fell off of the show by its final season. So let's jump right into season 2 and see if any cracks start forming yet. Season 2 begins with the episode My New Wand, in which Star's new wand ends up trapped in the Book of Spells, which also gets trapped in Star's closet with Marco. Glossaric, who will be playing a more active role in training Star this season, tells Marco to find Star's secret in order to unlock the closet. He tells Star to open the closet by dipping down into the soup, aka use magic without her wand, something her mom didn't learn until she was 19. When Marco begins to read a page in Star's diary about him, Star is finally able to
Dip down.
Glossaric finds that the new wand can certainly still produce magic, but something is very wrong with it. Episode 1B shows us what happened to Ludo after the finale. Floating in space for a while, Ludo is pushed into a dimension by a green comet. The rest of the episode features him fighting a bird and a giant spider to collect a bag of chips that is likely a reference to Nacho Bear. Once conquering both spider and bird, Ludo sees the green comet again and has a vision of Star, who leads him to the severed piece of the wand, attached to a 3-fingered hand. These episodes were an excellent start to the new season. They give us immediate answers to questions presented in the Season 1 finale, while outlining the focus of the rest of the season. The split wand. In episode 2A, Star is excited to meet with the school counselor Mr. Candle on career day, only to be disappointed as she's reminded of her future as Queen of Muni. Marco, on the other hand, is told he'd make a great janitor on Garbage Island.
Ah, man, I'd love to be queen.
I don't think I have to say anything here. When Marco finds out Mr. Candle is actually an agent for Tom, sent to make sure Star and Marco are not together, Marco lies about their relationship status to get Tom to blow his cover. During a ping-pong battle to the death, Marco is able to get through to Tom, and Tom decides to stop trying to force Star to love him again. Star has a full existential crisis over her future, but Marco comforts her, saying she'll get to rule Muni her own way. Following the trend of fearing for your future, 2B begins with Marco having a nightmare with some interesting imagery. The first notable thing is a locker filled with Muberty hearts that blow away to reveal what appears to be Marco's coffin.
I'm wearing a suit!
Okay, so I understand this line was written to be a comedic replacement for Marco saying he's dead, but my god is it the most transcoded moment for Marco in the entire show. I have heard many trans people express the same fear, even before they knew they were trans. The fear of being presented as something you're not in death. And in a dream about feeling unprepared for the future, how else am I supposed to read this? But more important to the plot is the end of the dream. With a slowed down music box rendition of the Blood Moon Waltz playing in the background, Marco watches his peers float away. Apparently, Marco has dreams like this often, Star calling them stuck-in-life dreams. The detail Marco fixates on is gaining his red belt in karate, but the message is clear. Consciously or not, the Blood Moon haunts him. The rest of the episode isn't very important, Marco's sensei is a sham, they both earn their red belts, moving on. In episode 3A, Marco does a bad job teaching Star how to ride a bike, and has to save her with the help of Oscar, as well as absolutely no help from Glossaric. Also not a very important episode, but it's alright, and it's one of only like 2 episodes in which Oscar plays a large role.
I know just how she feels, because I can't stop either. Brakes are out. Steering wheel too.
Episode 3B is about a dog stealing Star's wand, and it's fine. It's a fine episode. It serves as a more blatant example of Star avoiding her problems as she stalls dealing with the dog. It's just, I don't know. Season 2 is a great season. A lot of interesting stuff happens in it, but some of the less story-focused episodes don't quite capture the same magic Season 1 did. Maybe it's just that there's more story intrigue in Season 2 making me impatient. I don't know. I just feel bored watching these episodes. Moving on. In episode 4A, Star runs from the cops. Okay, this one lands for me. She stays with an old lady who's obsessed with hair, hallucinates a dragon. It's a bit all over the place, but I like that it doesn't hesitate.
Star, isn't that what got you into this mess in the first place?
No, Marco. That was the rainbow glitter unicorn gnome hat kitty bacon Hawaiian nightmare spell.
Now back to story relevance. Ludo hasn't gotten the hang of his new wand yet, but he learns the wand seems to respond when he's angry and beats up a bunch of rats. At the same time, Star finds her spells aren't acting right, as her magic is also affected by her emotions now. Things get worse as she acts out of anger, but when Marco is in trouble, she's able to gain back some control. These events make her a lot more hesitant to use her wand, though. Episode 5A seems like it's not too story-focused, but it's actually pretty important. Star meets her hero, Mina Loveberry, a human warrior who seems to have lost her touch on reality. Star goes along with it until Mina tries to take over Earth.
Thought you cared about being a warrior!
I guess I thought being a warrior was something different.
I really like this scene here. The conclusion isn't just that Mina is nuts, but that once again, Star's perception of human history and what being a warrior means is challenged. Weirdly though, Mina's idea of conquering is contrasted to American democracy, which is a bit ironic considering the obvious themes set up in Independence Day. It's only present in this episode, but it was a weird choice. Episode 5B is another Star's dad-focused episode, in which he wrestles with the fact that Star and himself are growing older. It's pretty predictable, I don't think it needs a recap, but it achieves its goals well, and Star and her dad share a nice moment in the end. Also has this terrifying imagery.
Brand new dad!
Episode 6A is the return of Buff Frog and his baby tadpoles, as he needs Star and Marco to babysit. Typical messy babysitting episode. The B episode, on the other hand, shows us what Buff Frog was up to while they were babysitting. In need of food, he teams up with his former coworker Boofly to find out how rats are getting human corn. The team finds a hole in the Royal Farms force field, and while unable to get through, Buff Frog promises he will discover where the hole came from. At the end of the episode, we see the rats collecting corn for Ludo. In episode 7A, Star, Marco, Ponyhead, and this girl named Kelly wait in line for the famous Goblin Dog. After starting a riot, and Marco accidentally earning the Goblin Dogs by sacrificing $650 or something, they get to try Goblin Dogs and go on a drug trip. Neat animation. Also, Kelly's boyfriend Tad lives on top of her head. That'll come up later. 7B brings us right back to Ludo. As he struggles to find control over his wand, the wand supposedly starts speaking to him and convinces him to track down Star. Meanwhile, Glossaryck is actually making an effort to teach Star magic from the Book of Spells, but when she's unresponsive to his teachings, he pretends Star hurt his feelings and traps himself in a box. It isn't until Ludo attacks and Star thinks Glossaryck has died that he reappears and gets Star to finally use the book. But now Ludo has a new goal, to get the Book of Spells. It's implied this was also the outcome Glossaryck was going for. Episode 8A explores Star's heritage at the annual Butterfly Johansson picnic. Star is upset she's still being placed at the kids' table and sneaks into the annual Flags game, aka King of the Hill, deciding to play on her own team against both sides of the family. Marco makes Star realize how insane the game is, so she instead makes an attempt to unite the family by bringing all the flags to the top. Moon stops her in an expression of magic bearing resemblance to puberty, but when she hears of Star's plan, she shows pride in Star's growing maturity. 8B is probably my favorite non-story focused episode of Season 2, as it's the first episode to feature Jana in a key role. Jana Ortega is a chill, rebel girl type who likes the occult and creeping out Marco.
Its thumbprint lock will allow no man or magical creature to ever break
Got
into... Jana, get out of town!
How'd you do that, Jana? I've got Marco's thumbprint. In fact, I've got all your sensitive information, Marco.
Get out of town!
I haven't mentioned her yet because she only makes minor appearances in Season 1, but from here on out she becomes a semi-regular character and one of my favorites. In this episode, Star gets sent to detention and is declared Detention Mayor by Jana, both to stop Star from leaving and to get her to help with the things the other students want. Star begrudgingly goes along with it at first, but after having a fun time playing schemes with Jana, she embraces detention and Jana as a friend. It's an episode with very little plot or stakes, but I just find Star and Jana's weird girl bestie dynamic satisfying to see develop.
Rip his head off! Tear him apart!
Episode 9A is about Star having a sleepover with Janny, Jackie, Ponyhead, and, this girl. I don't think she's ever given a name other than StarFan13. Something to appreciate, while Starfan is used for comedy, her depiction doesn't come from a mean-spirited place, and the other characters are only ever nice to her. It's refreshing compared to other fangirl takes in media. After Marco tries to look cool in front of Jackie, Ponyhead forces him and the girls to play a magical game of truth or punishment. Everyone tells a few lies and faces punishments, but they find they aren't allowed to leave until the game is finished, forcing them to answer who they have a crush on.
I think we all know who I have a crush on, don't we, Marco? 18th century poet, John Keats.
Star says Oscar, Jackie says a guy from skate camp, and Marco is forced to announce his crush on Jackie. When the game reveals someone lied, Marco acknowledges that he's not sure if he likes Jackie or the image he's created of her, but he wants to get to know her better. And as the game tries to kill them, Star breaks it by proving it's not always as black and white as truth or lie. The episode ends with the machine implying to us Star has a crush on Marco, though it seems she either doesn't know it yet or refuses to admit it to herself. Naturally, this will be an important plot point throughout the rest of the season, along with Marco's confession to Jackie. Episode 9A marks the return of Miss Heinous, as she hires the assassin Rasticor to kill Star and bring her back the rebel princess Marco. Meanwhile, a Quest Buy gift card that Star got Marco is about to expire, and Jana just seems to hang out at their house all the time now. What's her home life like? Turns out the card will also kill them both if it expires. Rasticor gets blasted into dust, Marco finds a privacy wallet he likes, and Jana's a freak. Miss Heinous is delivered Rasticor's remaining arm, and once again vows revenge on Princess Marco. The next episode is... oh boy, here we go. Tom shows up in the Diaz household to ask Marco to hang out, tempting him with tickets to a Mackie Hand movie marathon. Marco suspects ulterior motives, but Star encourages him to give it a shot. Despite the initial hesitation, the two end up bonding over their shared love of a boy band and cereal, I guess. However, Marco finds out the real reason Tom's hanging out with him is to pass his anger management course, as he has to spend 3 hours with the person he hates the most to graduate. Tom regrets lying to him, and after literally singing a breakup song together,
we spiraled high on a gust of love, and I knew right from the start.
He uses all his power to bring back Mackie Hand from the dead for Marco. What the fuck? So, people really liked this episode when it came out, for obvious reasons, and while I do enjoy the episode a lot, I also have some contempt for it, because, well, it's a joke, right? I mean, the episode's teaser poster, the boy band, the singing a love song together. It's the bromance trope. It's supposed to be comedic that they're acting gay. So I won't be celebrating this episode as queer content, but it does show that, platonic or romantic, Tom and Marco have great chemistry, leaving room for Tom to become a more prominent character in the show. Episode 10B is the return of the corn plot. Buff Frog is caught and taken to grind corn for whatever Ludo's up to. He finally learns of Ludo's involvement, and after escaping, plans to warn Star of his growing power. Episode 11A is just a Halloween special. After Mr. Diaz gets down on himself for not being scary, Star and Jana summon Hungry Larry to haunt their house. It's fun, and it might give your 5-year-old trauma. That's all you can really ask for in a Halloween episode. 11B is also filler-esque, but it's important too. It reveals that Star's spells are sentient beings that live inside her wand, some of them even married with kids. I'm sure this is a plot detail that will not backfire at all. Specifically, this episode is about Spider with a Top Hat, an entertainment spell that wants to be a warrior and be taken more seriously. By the end of the episode, Spider finds his battle spirit through a laser gun in his hat. Cute! Episode 12A shows us there's another interior of the wand that acts as an extension of Star's memories. When Star's spells are coming out wonky, Glossaric takes her inside to find out what doesn't belong. She loses Glossaric and gets lost in this dreamlike memoryscape, and after being chased by paradoxical timeline-shattered versions of herself, she finds the castle room that displays tapestries of all the former queens. Star reads out some of the tapestries, the most important being Queen Eclipsa, who fell in love with a monster and fled Muni.
Ooh, that girl.
Star's mother's tapestry mentions her using a dark spell to threaten an immortal monster, Toffee. Toffee's finger then comes out of the tapestry, the thing that doesn't belong. Star and Glossaric successfully remove the finger from her wand, and Star throws it in her secrets closet for now. This episode sets up a ton of stuff that will be explored later, showing there was a good amount of future planning that went into the show. Which is interesting, because a lot of people say the series finale seems to come out of nowhere. I guess we'll have to see how much of this stuff sticks. 12B is an episode I had very little memory of. Basically, Ponyhead and Marco wear skinny jeans, commit Grand Theft Auto, make pizza, and get closer as friends. Fun episode, moving on. In 13A, Star convinces Glossaric to unlock a forbidden section of the Book of Spells, written by Queen Eclipsa, the monster lover mentioned before. Though based on how we've seen Glossaric manipulate Star into certain actions this season, it's likely he wanted this to happen. However, Glossaric is forcefully called forth by the Magic High Commission at the worst time, giving Star full reign to the new section. He tries to make the trip as quick as possible, but Magic is on the fritz. Upon reaching the Magic High Commission, who will meet more thoroughly throughout the season, Queen Moon explains something is sapping magic from the universe, and Moon wants Glossaric to quicken Star's magic training and be more direct. Glossaric refuses, explaining that he adopts methods best for each princess, and Moon needs to trust him and Star. When Glossaric returns, he finds that Star read Eclipse's entire chapter on dark magic and wasn't really affected.
But Marco, on the other hand? Yikes.
13B brings us back to the romantic side plot of this season. As Marco plans to finally ask Jackie out, he grows a second head on his neck that blurts out all of his secrets and insecurities. Turns out it's a curse Tom put on him before they started hanging out, with no cure other than to let it spill all of Marco's secrets.
And how long will that take?
It depends. How insecure are you?
Oh no.
This is an episode you don't want to watch if secondhand embarrassment bothers you. Marco decides to be honest and spill all of his insecurities to Jackie to get rid of the curse, and Jackie still invites him to go out to the movies. Episode 14 is our first full-length episode of Season 2, and just like St. Olga's and Season 1's finale, it is excellent. Star and Marco are planning on going to the school dance together as friends, but Star forgot she made plans with Jana to perform a seance for a dead birthday clown, rumored to return on his 100th death day. Thankfully, Jackie ends up asking Marco to the dance, so everything works out. Star has been nothing but supportive of Marco and Jackie's blossoming relationship so far, but she starts to have more complicated feelings when she sees them out for the dance. Jana tries to keep Star's attention on the clown seance, but Star's mind is clearly elsewhere. And Glossaric has decided to come along too, I'm sure with no ulterior motives. Jackie and Marco end up ditching the dance, teaching Marco how to skateboard instead. After Jana falls asleep on her, Star tries to call Marco, to no avail. Convincing herself that it's because she's worried about him, Star uses a spell in Eclipse's chapter, the All-Seeing Eye, to spy on Marco. When she starts feeling jealous, Star accidentally pops a wheel on Jackie's skateboard, which scares Star into stopping the spell. Janet is woken up, and Ludo decides to make an appearance. Meanwhile, Marco and Jackie share their first kiss, and then...
Huh? Marco? Is everything okay?
I love this scene because there are so many different ways to interpret it. Does Marco see the blood moon because he's kissing Jackie, or because Star's in trouble? Is this a sign that Marco is with the wrong person, or that Marco is worried he's with the wrong person? And if it's the first option, who gets to make that decision? More on that thought later. For now, Marco sees Star's missed calls and rushes to see if she's in trouble. Unfortunately, when Marco and Jackie arrive at the scene, Star's jealousy shifts her magic to create a black hole, slowly sucking her in. I'm sure that's not a metaphor for anything. While Marco, Jackie, and Jana manage to save Star, Ludo succeeds in stealing the Book of Spells, Glossaric included. This episode did a great job of combining the main story plot and the romantic side plot to create a situation that just sucks for every character involved. If you're someone who likes the romantic drama, it's a lot of fun to read Jana as having a crush on Star, and experiencing the horrible gay disappointment of hearing her talk about Marco all night during their clown seance date. But on the other side of the plot, Glossaric definitely knew he was going to be captured by Ludo, right? Why else would he decide to go with Star that night? Trying to analyze Glossaric's motives only gets more confusing as the show goes on, so let's move on for now and see what happens. In episode 15A, Star gets the information about Ludo's hideout from Buff Frog and immediately storms the lair with Marco. Upon finding the place abandoned, she decides to use the All-Seeing Eye spell again. She's even able to break through the spell by dipping down, but Glossaric refuses to come with her, saying he belongs to Ludo now.
I need you!
Maybe this is what you need.
Star cheers up a bit, learning she's developed a reputation as the rebel princess, and she decides it's time to tell her mom what happened. Her parents once again tell her they'll handle the situation and are just glad she's safe, and Star decides that night to begin writing her own spellbook. Unfortunately, this notebook isn't very important, but it is a symbol of her growth as a princess. 15B is about Marco's sensei's birthday, and wow, I don't care. Basically, Star finds out that their party magician is using real magic to absorb everyone's joy, and no one believes her. It's just not very satisfying or entertaining to me. There's some fun little moments. The magician calls Marco Jennifer, which people theorized was his name from the future. Marco says, "this."
The point of Earth magic is to allow yourself to be entertained by pretending that it's real. Just like love.
Which is a weird thing to say after starting your first relationship, but yeah, not much else here. The next two episodes, on the other hand, have a lot going on. In 16A, Moon sends someone to evaluate Star's magic training so far, now that Glossaric isn't there for her anymore. If she fails, she will be sent back to Muni. Unfortunately, when Star is asked to magically transport an apple intact, the evaluator fails her for not knowing basic magic. However, determined to stay on Earth, Star casts a spell that grows a tree from the apple's seed and delivers a new, perfectly grown apple. When the evaluator returns to Queen Moon, she determines that Star's magic has far surpassed Moon's at her own age, the last queen to show such prowess being Queen Eclipsa. Episode 16B is a very interesting Marco-focused episode, and the first episode that properly introduces us to a member of the Magic High Commission. Marco borrows Star's dimensional scissors and finds out they were a pair stolen from Hekapu, the being who creates all dimensional scissors. He must now track down Hekapu and blow out her flame to earn new scissors. Star finds out that Ponyhead stole the scissors and goes to rescue Marco, but what she finds upon entering Hekapu's portal is a 30-year-old Marco who has finally earned his own dimensional scissors. Despite growing to love the life he led in this dimension, Marco agrees to go home with Star and turn back into a 14-year-old.
Password? I don't remember my password.
I have complicated feelings about this episode. Let me make it clear. My problem is not that I think Marco is actually a 30-year-old man now, and all his Earth relationships are now predatory or whatever. That's a bad faith interpretation. Yes, Marco did live those extra 16 years, but nothing in the show implies he doesn't still have the brain of a teenager, at least upon arriving back on Earth. I understand why that may make people uncomfortable, but personally, I don't care about that. My problem is that the show isn't set up to explore the ramifications of this event. He hasn't been on Earth in 16 years, and he's supposed to just go back to living the life of a teenage boy. The episode leaves off with that heavy implication that goes nowhere. Why didn't they just make it that when he returns to Earth, the 16 years he spent away no longer feel like 16 years? Marco can still keep the character growth he got from that journey without feeling like he's in a dimension and body he hasn't known for over half his life. It's really an excellent episode on its own, I just wish they either committed to its impact or rewrote the ending a bit. In episode 17A, Star gets stuck in a time loop when asked to solve a math problem in class. When she tries to get help from Father Time, we meet our second Magic Commission member, Omnitraxus Prime.
I'm Omnitraxus Prime. I'm the space-time guy. The time loop. That's my territory.
Omnitraxus explains that in every timeline except our Star's timeline, she was able to solve the math problem, and her failure to do so is causing her timelines to collide. Star does finally solve the problem, but gets it completely wrong. Still, the timeline is resolved, and she's praised for trying. In 17B, Star and Ponyhead get their old party crew back together to save their favorite club, the Bounce Lounge, from closing. Only important characters in this episode are Kelly and her boyfriend Tad, who we met in Goblin Dogs and will play a role in future seasons. Currently though, their only character trait is they break up a lot.
Don't you remember, baby? This is the first place we ever broke up. Want to get back together?
Yeah!
The gang fails to save the lounge, and Ponyhead steals the photo booth. Episode 18A is the introduction to Magic High Commission members number 3 and 4, Chancellor Lekmet and his apprentice, roommate, partner, Romulus. Romulus kidnaps Star and Marco because he thinks Star is causing the magic fritz. When Lekmet finds out and tries to call the commission, Romulus freezes him as well as his own talking snake hands. He unfreezes Star and explains his job is freezing anyone powerful and evil for eternity, and we see in this shot he has Queen Eclipsa. The two of them bond, and after Star realizes the High Commission doesn't know about what happened to Glossaric yet, Romulus agrees not to tell them if Star doesn't tell them about him trying to freeze her. Speaking of Glossaric, episode 18B explores his training of Ludo. The reason Glossaric never taught Star basic magic is because she excelled at using her imagination, which Ludo doesn't know how to do. So he begins his lessons with Levitado, the spell Star was supposed to use in her evaluation. Ludo picks it up quickly and starts projecting his daddy issues on Glossaric.
You proud of me?
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Could you say proud of me, though?
I'm proud of you.
However, the wand tells Ludo there's a chapter Star has seen that Glossaric is keeping from him, so he gets Glossaric to show him Eclipse's chapter. Immediately upon opening the chapter, Toffee is able to take over Ludo's body, confirming it is Toffee speaking to Ludo through the wand.
Time to give it up, old man. You'll never get him on your side.
But I don't have a side.
You don't, do you? Excellent.
19A continues Miss Haynes' plot to get her vengeance on Marco, and we see her bounty hunter Rasticor is slowly regenerating from his arm. Haynes tries to appeal to Marco's parents. She also spends the whole episode using she/her pronouns for Marco, and the Diazes don't question it at all.
I can't believe our son led a revolution and we didn't even know!
I'm not sure if I should be mad. Or proud.
Marco ends up agreeing to film an apology video, which he purposely botches, but Haynes has lost too many of her marbles to notice. The episode ends with a reminder of Haynes' hidden cheek marks, and her henchman Gemini is kind of a creep. In 19B, Marco is upset when his sensei picks Jeremy to represent the dojo for... I don't care. Look, I do like that the show has these Marco-focused episodes about Earth stuff. I just find Marco's sensei to be an annoying character, and I've already seen him too much. Marco's beef with the rich 8-year-old is still fun, but we're getting to the end of the season, and this video is gonna be long enough. In episode 20A, Star is keeping herself busy to not have to think about how much she's screwed up as a princess. However, she ends up breaking the school's beloved mascot statue. Chaos ensues, Star shows her leadership prowess. Also not a very important episode, but very silly.
Ferguson! Alfonso! I haven't talked to you guys all year, but you're always there in the background doing your thing!
And 20B brings us back to the romance drama of the season. Star has gotten tickets for her and Marco to see Love Sentence in concert. They say Love Sentence is their thing, which is funny because they've only been mentioned in Tom and Marco's episode, but sure. As a show of goodwill, Star also invites Jackie, even telling her it was Marco that got her tickets. Star and Jackie actually bond quite well. It's Marco that ends up feeling left out at first, but they're able to all connect before the concert starts. In the heat of the moment, Marco and Jackie kiss during the concert. Star tells Marco that it's fine and he should spend time with his girlfriend, but she leaves the concert alone with bitter feelings.
Till the day you broke my heart.
There's something about this episode that usually would bother me, but I actually appreciate it a lot here. The song that sets the theme is called Just Friends, and as an aromantic person, I don't love the framing of friendships being something lesser than romantic relationships. However, at least in this episode, that's not how they frame it at all. Before the final scene, Star was thriving in her friendship with Marco and bonding well with Jackie. Sure, part of that is she's been in denial of her feelings, but Star was doing okay until she was shut out, until she faced the reality that Jackie would be prioritized over her. It's not that Marco's done anything wrong here, really. He did what was expected of him, and he showed emotional maturity by apologizing to Star and checking on her. But when you're a teenager whose best friend is the closest person in your life, it can be hard when you realize you're not always going to be the closest person in their life. As someone who's experienced something similar, this episode captures what it's like perfectly. That experience alone is enough to make you question your feelings, but I'm sure already having a crush just makes it worse. In this moment, Star feels she is just friends with Marco. Episode 21 is another excellent full-length episode and the penultimate episode of the season. Star is required to have a princess song written about her to introduce her future queendom, but Star is dreading it as the songs are boring and meaningless. The new royal songstrel, Rubariot, voiced by Fall Out Boy's Patrick Stump, visits Star to write the song, but Star escapes the house to avoid him. Meanwhile, Queen Moon is going on a secret mission to visit Ludo's family. It turns out Ludo's parents were lords, but Ludo locked them out of their castle, which no longer exists because of Toffee. The parents don't know where he is, but his younger brother Dennis brings Moon to him in hopes she can help Ludo get better. When Moon spots the wand, she has Dennis fly them back immediately.
So, can you help him?
I'll do what I can.
Marco's able to convince Star to talk to Rubariot, and after some initial conflict, she realizes Rubariot wants to capture the real her unlike past princess songs. If I could, I'd just play you the whole song here cause it's great, but I'll link it in the description. The main part is a rock song that Queen Moon actually likes, but it then turns dark as Rubariot tells the story of how Star lost Glossaryck and the Book of Spells, revealing the secret to the High Commission and the entirety of Muni. Star planned the song to end there, but Rubariot added his own final note.
Star Butterfly is in love with her best friend. And his name is Marco Diaz.
Oh no.
Faced with two major confrontations she doesn't know how to handle, Star runs away once again. As much as I could profess my love for this episode, genuinely it's so good, watch it if you haven't. I want to jump right into the season finale. The Diaz family is hosting an end-of-school-year party. Perfect timing! Star tries to talk to Marco but gets nowhere, so she calls an emergency friend meeting for advice. The gang convinces Star to get some space first and go to a different party. She isn't feeling the party at first, until she runs into Oscar. On Muni, Moon and the High Commission waste no time and storm Ludo's current hideout. They're able to get the wand, but Ludo tells them Glossaryck is gone. Apparently, after Toffee possessed him, Glossaryck and the book disappeared and the wand stopped working. To Moon's credit, she does try to help Ludo and lets him know his little brother is worried about him. Unfortunately, Toffee takes over and seems to sap the magic from Moon and the High Commission. Lekmit revives Moon, but it costs him his life. Moon is able to flee with the rest of the High Commission, but Toffee leaves one final message.
Tell Star I'm coming for my finger.
Star bonds with Oscar, but it's a bit forced on her part. She leaves the party and finally sits Marco down to talk, choosing to lie and say she doesn't have a crush on him. When she returns to her room, though, Moon is there waiting for her. She tells her about Toffee's return, and that Star needs to come back to Muni. Before she leaves, Star decides to tell the truth about her feelings to Marco in front of everyone, and leaves for good.
Star! Hey! What do you mean? Star?
I first got into Star vs. as Season 2 was airing, and it's still probably my favorite season. I wasn't as interested in the fillerish episodes, but the story makes up for it tenfold. It delivers on the plot intrigue well for all of the best episodes of Season 1, and introduces ideas Season 1 was missing, like Glossaryck in the book actually playing a role in Star learning magic. I'm not usually one for romance drama, but as I said with Just Friends, Season 2 captures teenage relationship dynamics in a very relatable way. It also doesn't make the mistake of trying to separate Star's teen drama and her magical life. With both intertwined, the show emphasizes the extreme pressure on Star as a 14-year-old, which makes her flawed approach to her problems easy to understand. That's the other thing Season 2 does great, depicting both Star and Marco as messy, flawed, and still extremely lovable teenage characters. An interesting shift happened when I first watched Season 2, though. During Season 1, I was all for the Starco ship, but by the end of Season 2, I didn't particularly want them to get together. Why that may have been, and how I feel about their relationship now, we'll talk about more in the Blood Moon Ramble section of this video. Unlike my last video, we're not doing any breaks or intermission bits, we're jumping straight into Season 3. Some people may say this is when the show starts going downhill, but spoilers, I love Season 3.